this, that yes, anyone is and can have contact, but if you have self mastery first and foremost, you are going to be better equipped to stay in truth, to avoid darkness, which again is another aspect of us. But people who say that darkness doesn't exist, well, they haven't been picked up like me and choked. They haven't seen doors ripped off hinges when nothing's there doing it. So when people say that this stuff can't manipulate physical reality, it's just not true. I'm Peter Maxwell Slattery, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Peter, man, I am just so happy to be here with you finally. Thank you for taking the time.
No worries, Trey, and thanks for having me.
So we talked a little bit on the side before this conversation about the U.S. and what's happening here. There have been a lot of drone sightings on the East Coast. Some people have been saying that they're orb types, and then some are actually looking, I guess, showing pictures of drone type pictures. Um, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of excitement around the orbs right now, and just in general, the East Coast, like experiencing this type of phenomena is really making the headlines over here. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's something where, like I say, it's not black and white. There's reports going back a long time, a lot of stuff happening on the East Coast as well as the West with the military sightings going right back. So I think it's a mixed bag. And even the insiders that I know, there's different stories, which shows that even they don't even know what's going on. And until there's truth, I just sort of sit back on the sidelines. I'm experiencing this daily. So to me, and I've even got some of them coming to me, I just sit back and I don't even watch the show. I just do my own thing. I haven't watched television for 15 years except at airports. So I just do my thing.
Well, I'm curious to hear more about you, man. I know you've talked about your story so many different times, but I'm new to your story. You've been experiencing this type of phenomena for a while now, right?
Since a kid, I didn't understand, we could say, the implications or anything about it. But it wasn't until around 2010 when it became a regular thing to now being a daily thing. And I think it always has been a daily thing. I think we all have contact in our own way, whether it's with our higher self, angelic, extraterrestrial, ultra terrestrial intelligences, the list goes on. And unless we're educated on that, we can't really pick up on it because a lot of it's through thought, ideas, epiphanies, concepts, and knowingness. So it's been a lifelong thing, but yeah, it wasn't, we could say, more tangible till about 2010 when there was a spate of sightings with witnesses, though there was witnesses to events before that. And up until today, till last night, and even this morning, there's been some orbs and things appear in the house around me as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag.
What are the orbs, right? Like, I have been experiencing um, phenomena that I can't explain. Like, I see it, and I may be too skeptical. Like, maybe I should. That's the right mindset that I should have. But then I know that it's not just like a star that is twinkling or something, because it's like in different locations throughout the sky. And I do have like some type of app, and it's not like a moving satellite. I've sent you a picture and it's very hard to tell, but it looks like, if I were to explain it, like a star that is quickly flashing, or some type of spherical object that is pulsating. And it, like, I my heart center has been on fire recently. I don't know if it's because of the meditations that I've been doing, but then last night and the night prior to that, I had that phenomena happen. And when I go out and try to communicate with it, it will change locations. Like, the skeptic in my mind is like, all right, if you're real, if you're an orb, because I've seen other people's videos of them and they're moving throughout the sky. Like, I've seen your videos. You have hundreds of them, and they are moving throughout the sky. So I will ask it to move, and then it won't, and it will just stay there, and then I'll go to sleep, and then I'll wake up to go do a cold plunge on my deck, and then it will be in a different location, but still pulsating. So I know you haven't been able to clearly see the video footage just because it's, taken on an iPhone and all the things that you have to fact check before deciding what it is. But just listening to that description, like, what are your thoughts?
Well, like I say, there's things where apps are good to use to discount planets, stars, satellites, in some cases aircraft if people aren't even equated with that, with landing lights. When it's stationary, that's where going through the process of elimination. With myself, I'm interfacing with the craft a lot of the times. When I'm in groups, sometimes not, because there's a lot going on. But with that said, it's something where when we come down to what the orbs are, and I say to people, you got to follow that intuition, because again, you're going to hear me say this a lot. Pardon me. Is that a lot of this isn't black and white over and over, because orbs, for an example, in later years, I understood that in some cases, it's two opposing tetrahedrons that equate to a Merkaba, and one spinning one way, meaning one pyramid at the top spinning one way, one spinning the other way, and spinning that quick, it's giving the appearance of a flashing ball of light. Now, this is what we could say is the ascension body, the image of God that we're made in. The Merkaba is seen in the Star of David, is seen in mandalas around the planet, what have you. But we've also got the rainbow body that the Tibetans go on about, and the rainbow is mentioned in the Bible, and a lot of times we see art depicting one or the other. Sometimes it can actually be within a sphere or an orb. And when we get into this is where we've got different layers of the light body, and there's even an orb template. And I say, if you work with the orb of light, it's comprised of the dodecahedron and the different plutonic solids, as well as the Merkaba and different, we could say, Mandela type light bodies that are within the sphere of light. One way I could explain this is that right now, we've got a lot of television and radio stations being broadcasted in Wi-Fi. We can't see it. But if you turn on your device that's attuned to it, you'll get a picture online. We could say that's a realm that's overlapping this realm. In some cases, they're going from one realm to the next, and they start, we could say, imploding and start to explode into the next frequency. Some of these beings are floating in their orb of light or Merkaba. Some are actually crafts that we all seeing the energy field of, if it's more of a nuts and bolts physical type vehicle, though a lot of them are organic or made of, we could say, it's like metamaterial. But then you've got things like spirits, nature orbs, fairies, elementals, the list goes on, that can all appear. This is where the mechanism that a lot of these intelligences use to traverse, going from one frequency to the next, they will appear as an orb, they will appear as a mist or a cloud or an apparition type uh, substance. And when you start getting into this, as I've been aware of since 2010, when I just knew to go out, or setting the intention with groups to go and see crafts before I ever knew what CE5 was, or what Dr. Greer or Master Teacher James Gilliland with ECETI in America, who's had tens of thousands of people going there since the 80s, going there and seeing this through intention. The intention can start to turn on the phenomena and interface with you, and you opening up in different ways, maybe. It's just a maybe. I'm not saying this is what's going on. Is that whatever you're connected to or is picking up on it is starting to manifest itself in ways that you can handle, and sometimes they'll push the barrier. And that could be angelic, it could be extraterrestrial, ultra terrestrial, the list goes on. It could even be another aspect of you. So I know that's a long-winded sort of thing that I'm going into, but this is why I say it's not black and white. I've got to sort of like go through, and there's a lot that I haven't even gone into with that.
Sure. It's gotta be frustrating, right? It's gotta be frustrating on your part, right? Having all this knowledge or knowing, and then trying to speak to someone who has not as much, and then trying to explain, like, what it could possibly be or whatever. Because I don't know, man. It could be anything, right? And, um, I think I th I think what's cool about it is that people are starting to look up to the sky more, if that makes sense. Like people are starting to become more curious about what else is out there. Like for me, for sure, having that evidence for myself, I've had many numerous other examples of experiences, not like this. This seems to be, to your point, like it started out with me um, asking for a sign, and then like a star showed up and then moved in the sky and then went back out, and then red slashes across the sky when I asked for a sign. And it like I before that I would never really pay attention and I wouldn't see anything. It wasn't until like I started meditating daily and like really becoming more aware of the universe that these signs started coming to me, and just kind of like toying and exploring on my own of just like, connecting and what does that look like, and show me a sign, and things started happening. And then next thing you know, like these flashing plasmoid like orbs are showing up in my reality now. So it's like, whoa, okay. Like something is definitely trying to like communicate. Um, I guess, for me, it's like staying calm and not like immediately thinking that it's going to be like the worst situation. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, what happens next? So to your experience, like when you start seeing this phenomena in the sky, like what has been the next step in that process of like introduction?
Well, going into that, this is why clearings are very important, because before I was known, we could say more for this. It was more the paranormal aspects where I'd go to some of the most haunted locations and investigate, wondering what I've been experiencing since a child back at that time 15 years ago. And this is very much why I found that when I'd even go and help people, and I've helped thousands of people now, about 5,000 people since 2010. I found that some people that thought their house was haunted, they were having ET contact, and some people that thought they were having ET contact, well, their house was haunted, because it's very much a huge overlap. And because one watched ghost hunters or the other watched UFO hunters, that was their come from. And so my come from with this was an intrigueness of trying to understand what I and others around me had experienced. And that next level depends very much on you, your frequency, and sometimes your environment. Because even here now at the sanctuary, I've got Jaya Sanctuary where people have come, a few have come from overseas as well. I've only been open a year. The psychic connection, the manifestations of beings and or crafts will be different depending on who's here. Because it's not about me, it's about us now doing it as a group, documenting it. I'm using Geiger counters, EMF detectors, infrared, uh, a huge range of different devices to document this, which to me, it's not about proving it now, it's about sitting on this in terms of, in a way of being able to do this in a group and document it for us as a group doing it with whoever comes here. I think in terms of that next level, as I said, there's many different factors, but for me, I was already having the contact and didn't think they were greys, angels, demons. I didn't know what they were because they weren't your typical greys, they were white. And it wasn't until a bit after 2010, I think it was the 2011 timeframe, where I had blue orbs start to appear in the home, and eventually there was lightning with them, and then they'll turn into these 7 foot tall light beings. There was one, and then there was two, and then all of a sudden I'm on board crafts, or what would look like crystal caves is the best way I could describe it, or crafts that are saucer shaped, that are structured from light, that are a conscious ship created through a group collective consciousness. And I've also been on physical crafts. And so the thing with this is, I say to a lot of people, even when they're here, we do a clearing before and after, because if you're not clear and clear in your intentions, you will interface with anything and everything, which can be very hazardous, that can cause attachments, possessions. So the most advanced beings, which the essence of us all are, because we're all equal, don't need a ship. Through thought, they can break down and rematerialize anywhere that they want. even a lot of these advanced races, they're using Stargate technology, but we've got an inner Stargate that bypasses a technological device. And so it's a very laid thing because people will come here for an example or see me, like even in my own home over the years, 300 people have personally witnessed things with me now. It's around 400 with here. And they don't want it to follow them home. And it's like, well, you came here for an experience. Let's sit down and do a clearing and set that intention when you go, because we set the intention for them to experience when they come here. Now, there is a few ways with this. Even with James Gilliland, who's got the East Seti Ranch, who's a master teacher and a good friend and mentor of mine. We've worked together now for nearly a decade. There's been people there run and hug a tree when they've seen a craft, get in their car, drive out, flooring out of there, never to come back, never to be in communication with the ranch because they're freaked out. Not from a bad experience, but it was so close to what they've experienced that it freaked them out. And as I say to people, even here, usually with most experiences, you don't have a fact to react until after the fact. In some cases, you will know if it's a dark experience because of the energy, the sensation. It's almost like your heart being pulled into your stomach, this dread that will come with it if it is negative. Other times, for example, with the Elohim that I interface with, or angelic intelligences and some other races, I can't stop crying. It's a human bodily reaction to a multidimensional experience that's taking place, and symbiotically you are one in that space-time experience with them, because it's almost like you're in an envelope and space-time is different. There's hair standing up, ecstatic, like your muscles are just getting blasted with energy when it's happening in real time. So that's the next step. The next step after that is understanding what is going on. I'll be the first to say that I know more than most. That's why I've been contacted by agencies, this, that, the other. And I'll tell you now, I still don't have a 100% clue what's going on. All I know is what I know, and usually that's a conduit for something deeper. But the next step is communication on a one-on-one or an even playing field. And that's where looking at the intelligences or looking at the ship, sometimes I can be on it, or I can be looking at another intelligence, and in my mind's eye, a second screen, that mind's eye opens up while I'm real time looking at them, getting information, visions, thoughts, feelings, epiphanies, concepts, everything to do, where it'd be like a 2-hour conversation could happen in 20 seconds like that. And I could either understand it straight away or it'll take a long time to understand. But I've come to find that you can interface with past loved ones that way, angels that way, native spirits that way. It's the same medium. So I assist people in processes working with that, because a lot of the time I'll say, what did you ask them who they were? No. It's because that's why the body's reacting. The last thing you're thinking in most cases is to pick up a camera or to ask what it is that you're interfacing with, who and what it is. And how do I do that? Not understanding it's all through thought. And that's why even with me, if I couldn't see, touch, taste, smell it, and have witnesses and film it, I didn't even want to talk about it. I had to train myself to capture the phenomena if I was going to go and talk about it. And then I started to understand, hey, I've been communicating with it. And then I started to work in a, we could say, a cohesive manner, to where I've been pulled off world or to meeting places and what have you. And I can actually interface like we are now, though I'm dominating the conversation at the moment. But that's the next level. And then the next level after that is realizing that we're all one consciousness interfacing with itself, and they're no better than us. And in a lot of cases, there's a soul connection to them. And sometimes another aspect of you, even though we're all one big twin flame interfacing with itself. So all another aspect of us.
How did you learn all this, man? Like you're saying all this stuff, and it's like you're saying it like I would talk about something that I've learned in school, like that, or you know what I mean? No, maybe not even that. What I learned in school is conceptual. I would say how I've lived my life, like, or what I've experienced in my life. You're talking about it like you know it, right? It's not like, oh, this is my theory. This is no, I know that this is what, is going on. So like, how did you get to this point? Like I mean, I guess you've had a lot of experiences. Like when you're interacting with with these intelligences, and you're talking about getting a download within 2 hours of conversation, are they giving you the blueprint of the universe of like, this is what's going on behind the scenes? There are councils of X, Y, and Z, angelic beings, councils of light, councils, different star seeds, all the things, right? Like, or was that like slowly over time you realize that there are different civilizations, different intelligences out there interacting in this universe?
This is coming from experience, and that's a great question. Number one is I don't want anyone to believe me at all, because we need to be skeptical and use discernment, but we've also got to let our guard down in a way of being totally open minded, because this, in my own experiences, has taken me places to where, as I've said, usually something I'm told or experience is a conduit to understanding something deeper. There's also the aspect of me having interfacing with source and higher intelligences on a soul level that I believe we're all Elohim beings, one fractal. Now, the Elohim is plural for gods in Hebrew if we go to the Bible, but there's different colors of them that can be orbs or appear as whatever they want. They can even look like they're on fire or a Merkaba rainbow energy. And there's, depending on the color, depends on we could say the density that they regulate. There's even creator beings that are Elohim that create the realms and the experiences that you're going to have and where the planets and stars go. And the stars are actually all, we could say, networking, traveling networks that are portals that, again, you could look at it like a neuron system in a brain if you want to equate it to that, to where the middle of each galaxy connects to another galaxy and what have you. But this that I'm telling you is because when there's a merging with another consciousness, and you've also got access to the book of your soul that's got access to everything else that I can't explain in a linear way, and I'm trying to do that. And I don't get frustrated at all talking about this. I just wish I could connect your mind with mine, because then you would get it more. It's hard to explain, but it's more of a integration when interfacing with other intelligences and other aspects, that you know what you know from besides this experience. And the way I explain it is that if you can imagine your highest expression, which is a cell of God's body, has a fractal line going to all these other experiences at the same time, this is really the highest self that's a cell of God's body. It's got a pinpoint of its awareness focused into Peter Maxwell Slattery that you're experiencing right now. And when you're able to get to the mind behind the mind and tap into that, that's where all access is. But there's still education going on for Source. And so some of it's integration with interfacing with other intelligences. I'm not sure if you've seen the movie that's up for free now. It was on Tubi and other places, Multidimensional. John Vivanka, who's worked for the US government as a remote viewer, he's been outsourced by different agencies and what have you, NASA, and very reliable person. He's even been in Australia and experienced things with me, and I've been with him in the States. He had up to 40 remote viewers, actually probably more now, remote view me to see, one, if I was telling the truth, and two, why. And yes, they worked out that I was telling the truth, because let's say the Guardian started to visit them, and even recently, as a few weeks ago, I got information that one of the beings rocked up in their house. So they've had physical experiences, and that's what happens if you remote view sometimes, is that these beings will come back and interface with you and appear in your reality, which has happened to them a number of times with the Guardians. It's some funny stories, but like John said, and I don't know what to do with this, but I've genetically been, we could say, tinkered with, not just for multidimensional communication and contact, but to be connected with Source at all times in a more of a coherent manner than what is normal for somebody that's able to tap into that, which I think we all can. And so I think when I saw their data from 40 remote viewers that were blind tasking me and not knowing who I am, reading some of that, there's still acceptance, but some of it does make sense. And my thing now is to assist others with that connection themselves, which is why I've been trained in different disciplines of yoga, meditation, remote viewing, NLP, hypnotherapy, counseling. The list actually goes on. That for since around 2005, I've dedicated myself to learning a lot of different disciplines so I can help the individual with tools that's more for them, because everyone's different. And even spent about 7.5 years of the last 15 years in isolation doing intense meditation and remote viewing 8 to 12 hours a day, split up in about 3.5 year increments. And that's because to be best of service and do what I'm here to do, that's the energy that's needed to do that and focus. But what I've done, not everyone needs to do. And I'm still trying to understand a lot of this myself.
Sure. So you weren't meant to be a soccer dad and hang out and
Well, I've had a ready-made family before, and it's something where, who's not to say that's not on the cards. I just turned 41 in November. It's just is what it is. It's what's meant to be is meant to be, and I'm at peace with where I'm at. As long as I can be a vehicle for God to work through each and every day, and if that's on the cards, so be it. So, and that was one of the things with the data, was that a lot of worlds are taking my genetics for their own worlds. So they said there's a lot of Pete's out there. So yeah,
so you got a lot of kids running around in the universe, huh?
apparently so. Who knows? But apparently so. We got to laugh about it.
How do you have regular conversations with people, right? Like, I mean, you feel like, can you have everyday conversations with people, like talking about regular things, regular life events? I feel like what you're experiencing is beyond this world. So to be grounded in a, a mundane conversation must be a chore for you.
Not really. It's the opposite, because even, let's say, locally with where I am, people have experienced stuff, but what they also realize is I don't really want to talk about this a lot of the time unless I'm meant to be. It's hard to explain what the meant to be is, but if somebody's coming around and we're talking about pickup trucks or the lawnmower or the gardening that I'm doing here or the weather or what they've been up to and what projects they got going on, it gets me out of this to be human momentarily. Because when they've gone, I'm multidimensional mind, half in this world, half in the other world. And even when that starts to happen, I say it's not that I'm not here, I'm here, but this is interfacing with something else that bypasses this conversation right now, and it can look like you're talking to a door. So I'm sort of vaguing out, but I just prefer to be having just normal conversations, and a lot of those people are usually experiences themselves. And when you're dealing with other experiences that are at a certain stage, which I think we all go through if we go down that path, the last thing you really do is talk about this unless it's warranted. Like most of the time, we'll be telling jokes. Like even James Gilliland is an example. Bring James up again. We'll just be cracking jokes. And even on the Skywatch field, as soon as we start doing that, pulling people away after you've set the intention, that's when all the activity starts up anyway. So yeah, it's a bit of a, again, not black and white scenario.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. What do ETs have anything to do with consciousness, right? Like the consciousness of, evolving consciousness. How are they, how does that play into our conscious evolution?
Well, everything is one, but as I say, the ETs aren't to be looked up to. A lot of us have been in those worlds and assisted in those worlds and experienced those worlds, but they're trying to ascend to the next stage of their own evolution. So just because they're a whatever dimensional extraterrestrial doesn't mean they're better than us. They're just operating in a physical vessel in a broader range of consciousness because they've evolved. The Earth human, what I've been told is that we're a super being in the 3D realm that is a conglomerate of many evolved races, including angelic, that what happens in this process they're not quite sure of, because nothing is quite like us out there. But then again, nothing's quite like everything else either. Everything's got its environment, different things, but a lot of these beings in our neck of the woods are actually part of our ancestral line or future offspring line. So, in some cases, I wrote a book I think 12, 13 years ago called Operation Starseed, which was a conduit to me understanding that the extraterrestrials are no better than us, that we've lived in those worlds, we've been in those worlds, and we are in those worlds, to come here and assist humanity with helping humanity to lift itself up and empower itself from within the human experience rather than it being an external thing, to realize the power from within because of forces and what have you that have, we could say, assisted with stunting the growth of humanity. But when you get to a point understanding that everything's one consciousness, you realize there's no good, there's no bad, that this is in God's mind. We could say, very similar to what the Tibetans and other cultures talk about, that some of these dark demonic or what appear to be dark intelligences are other aspects of you, seeing how you respond to an experience. And that will depend if you're ready to go to that next level. And there's no right or wrong about that next level, but it's actually yourself, another aspect of yourself that's appearing as a dark energy to see, all right, how you deal with this. Are you ready for that next stage in your own evolution? We're going through that at times. Extraterrestrials are going through that at these times. And also, if everything was hunky dory in the angelic realms, well, the angels and demons wouldn't be having a war that's been going on for beyond 2,000 years, 3,000. It goes on.
What's the war over? What's the war over?
There are. Uh, you could look at it as a war on consciousness and a war of sovereignty. But I'm inclined more to describe this as a war for us to go back in, no matter if we're on another planet experiencing an experience, whether we're on Earth, whether we're in a complete different realm, of us going back in. And I had an experience, the only way I can describe this, probably to get my point across, because I've got to use a lot of metaphors, is I had an experience once where I was actually in meditation and I saw a purple hue dodecahedron. And then it sort of blended into the grass, and then it zoomed out, and I could see people, plants, buildings, trees, everything is made up of these purple hue dodecahedrons. And it zoomed out, and I could see the Earth was one, the planets, the moons, the satellites, the star, our soul star, were all made up of these purple hue dodecahedrons within one. And then everywhere I looked was a purple hue dodecahedron. This galaxy was a purple hue dodecahedron as I was pulled out. The other galaxies were, and then I was pulled to what I perceived as the edge of this universe, and it was a purple hue dodecahedron. I'm looking around, realizing that if you look at my body as God, just as a metaphor, and each thing that makes up this body is a purple hue dodecahedron, there was a greater consciousness that created this universe that later I understood that, like us, or cells, because everything's made up of cells, cells can divide in two. That this universe can divide in two, and it keeps going fractal, we could say. And I'm not just talking fractal in the sense of fractal, I'm talking multidimensional fractal in the sense of each purple hue dodecahedron, when I was at the edge of the universe, was a different universe with its own planes and dimensions within it. And that all the cells within it, when they get to a certain level, can divide off from that purple hue dodecahedron and create its own universe with its own planes and dimensions within it. And then the cells within that again can keep doing that. Now, there is manipulation through some of the simulations, the realities that we're experiencing going on, from what I understand. Not from research, though people like David Icke and others are mentioning this. That what I will say, to follow the true light is to follow the love, which when somebody's passing, when I've been with them, I tell them follow the love, nothing else, because you can't fake that love. A demonic dark entity, AI, whatever fractal thing of that darkness you can interface with, cannot mimic that love to the extent that it pulls the heart. And this is all about soul evolution via self-mastery, which is why I'm dealing with that mostly now. Because I look at the prerequisites for this, that yes, anyone is and can have contact. But if you have self-mastery first and foremost, you are going to be better equipped to stay in truth, to avoid darkness, which again is another aspect of us. But people who say that darkness doesn't exist, well, they haven't been picked up like me and choked. They haven't seen doors ripped off hinges when nothing's there doing it. So when people say that this stuff can't manipulate physical reality, it's just not true. They just haven't experienced it. And because of that, they don't know what they don't know, just like there's so much I don't know. But this war, at the end of the day, is about us being the best version of ourselves, finding that light within. And when you get back to that stage, it's being the creator reality in a physical existence, and now you mastering that with all the trials and tribulations and what you can perceive as limitations. See possibility, not problems. See the possibility in a problem. Flip the script, because that lower frequency is the war that we're actually in, is to get out of that through what we perceive as limitations, through self-mastery, to connect to that light within and shift that. And I'm not even convinced that what I've just told you is 1% of what the war's about either. It's just my understanding of just getting my finger into it to understand it.
What does it do to your psyche when you hear or learn or know these things are going on in the background? And here we are, running around society thinking that this is our reality, right? Like, what is it? How do you like integrate that into your psyche? That these concepts that one, we're not alone, and two, there's a massive war going on for our consciousness, the inner world that is taking place, and we're not even aware of that.
I've come to a place that I'm okay with that being the situation. Not that I'm okay endorsing the darkness, but in the earlier years, I'll give you an example. I was on a morning TV show here, one of the biggest. And this was over a decade ago, probably 11, 12 years ago, give or take. And I thought, great, I got the evidence, I got witnesses, this is going to be done and dusted. And when I got off that show, I thought, how ignorant am I? Not only can I bring about disclosure, but two, by all rights and all means, with people's education, upbringing, social engineering, I should be insane to everyone else. How ignorant. Now, of course, a lot of people contacted me from all walks of life, but it was a grounding moment. And that's why now you've got to meet people with where they're at, and they're at where they're at for a reason. And they're another aspect of me that's experiencing things completely different for the overall collective from my understanding. So, and I don't see any hierarchy even with the beings. If it's truly your guides and truly your team that you're connecting with, they've got nothing but love and compassion, and they will not manipulate you and tell you got to do this, you got to do that. So for me, I'm at a place that I'm okay with where I'm at and where others are at. It wasn't like that to begin with. It was a bit of frustration because I was lucky from the point of view that people were and they still are experiencing things with me. So like my family said, you don't need brain scans, this and that. You got it on camera. We've been there when it happens. You're experiencing something. What it is, we don't know. But when it got to the deeper stuff, which I'm still hesitant, like even me talking about this, I'm hesitant sometimes because unless you've experienced it, it sounds absolutely crazy. So I'm at a place where the contact and the communication is extremely easy to deal with compared to what it's ever been. Doesn't mean there's there are times that it's trying. But in those earlier times, it was a lot of isolation, a lot of leave me alone, a lot of helping the people that came to me that were experiencing similar things and me listening to them because I learned from them as well as they learned from me. Like it's 27 thrown in the public eye with this. And the last 7 years now, maybe 8, I've dedicated every waking moment to helping people empower themselves going beyond extraterrestrials. It's usually that's the bait to get them into this, to where later in life they understand it's about consciousness. And then sometimes I've worked with very advanced teachers, some really well known, and they've had to backtrack, which is what I told them they're doing. They're backtracking, trying to understand the ET thing. And once you get that, it leaves where they're already at. but they're interested because it's all new to them, or they saw a craft or something occurred. Especially in yogic circles, they're told we don't talk about that, but yet I got yogis coming to me going, we're not allowed to talk about this, and you're experiencing it, and it's like, well, you got all these different gods and goddesses. They're if they're really in line with you, they're all about helping you to empower yourself, to elevate yourself, and so they come online when you go through this evolutionary process. And they're no better than us. They're just where they're at. So, that's why I haven't needed to watch television for 15 years. I can sit here by myself for 3 hours and just go through the encyclopedia of the universe in my mind, connecting more dots for the next thing that's got to be done, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, you're plugged in, right? So when you go into a 3 maybe a 3 year, here, 3 hour meditation where you're exploring the universe, downloading all the things, like where do you go? Like who do you talk to? Who do you speak to? And I know this is such a human question. Like what information are you receiving? Like are they giving you little pieces of information and like little tasks for you to go achieve? Like are you going to a particular civilization? Are you going to a particular star system? Like, what does that look like when you go into these meditations?
Well, to set the stage, this is more 50-50. Half of this, give or take, is an orb appearing in my house or a being materializing, and I'm interfacing with them, getting information like you would in a meditative state, which they had to do in the beginning, because if I wasn't having something tangible, I was like, this is made up in my head in meditation. Now I'll meditate sometimes 40 minutes at least, up to it could be a few hours a day. I don't set a time, but usually it's 40 minutes at least these days. Sometimes it's been at least an hour to a few hours, to when I do any practice. As you can see, I'm an intense person as well. So when I'm into something, I give it all I've got. I don't have time to waste. When I write a book, I do it till it's done. Whenever I do whatever, it's done until it's done. My thing, why I think, even with people that have wanted to test and study me, why I think we could say I'm successful as an example. I'll even have a group here. This has happened in the last few experiences in terms of workshops, where around 80 to 90% of the group, I'll take them through a process of what time and direction the craft's going to appear or orb on the ground. And that's how accurate they are. It's right up there in accuracy. And it's not me. I'll give a time, a location, maybe a couple, they'll all do it, and then things start to happen. Why I get those results, whether it's in that or meditation, I set the intention, but when it's my personal practices, I set the intention of whatever I need to experience right now to be a better person, to be of service, and to bring love and joy into my life. Give it to me. So that could be an experience. That could be going out of body. That could be a craft landing on me and now I'm vibrating onto a craft having an experience. That could be a healing. That could be 45 minutes of crap that I've done to other people being played out and me experiencing it from them and purging and healing and releasing it. That's how I get where I get, I think, is that I don't set the intention, which a lot of people, they do this. It's like, come here, but stop. It needs to be this way. I'm like, do a clearing, set the intention of whatever I need to experience, I let go. And sometimes nothing will happen. I'll just sit in this darkness. But that darkness is everything can be accessible, but I just sit in that. It's almost like bathing in the feminine aspect of God's arms, like a mother holding its child and just being momentarily. So yeah, this is the thing, is like what happens with me. A lot of people are around me when these things happen, and it's documented. But then it's not at other times as well, and in a meditative state. But I can do a lot of that in just real time. I don't need to meditate as much as what I used to. But the meditating was to work out the mechanics and techniques of mind working with the heart to go into, to quicken the process to multidimensional mind, that I can also now help others with, because I think that's the key. And the core physical manifestation of the light body is the heart. It's the first organ that comes into manifestation. It's the core of the light body. And so it's just some food for thought anyway.
Sure. No, I'm definitely in that rabbit hole right now. Do you think it's, and I've read some of Jacques Vallée's work. Do you think it's like actual like fairies, ETs, um, different civilizations, or do you think it's like one phenomena being all of that? You know what I mean? And interacting with humanity to evolve their consciousness, if that makes sense.
Both and more. That's why, again, it's not black and white. There is the mechanics when you get beyond a craft, needing a craft. The mechanics that a fairy uses, that a Bigfoot uses, which so many sightings, especially in the 70s in America, with orbs appearing at the same time, going into, extraterrestrials and angels and spirits. They're the same process they're using to materialize, for example, is the same thing, I think. They may have different ways that they do it, but they're changing frequency. They understand the makeup of the universe in some cases, from my understanding. And if you look at it on a bigger scale, so that's one, these things are real. Then you've got the aspect of everything that you just mentioned and I mentioned is an aspect of one consciousness interfacing with itself, right? Then you've got another aspect, if you want to look at this, that some of these intelligences, as I've experienced, not even, I would say, 5% of the universe is what we experience, meaning I've been even in crafts where they change frequencies in star systems, and I start to see planets and even the star phase out and new ones come online in that space, but in a different time. Then you get past that, and there is no planets and stars. It's complete different realms. Some of it going up to including fractal geometric living geometry that's the peripheral angelic kingdom before we break into source. Right? It's really hard for me to explain this. So we know now that we can only see a fraction of 0.005% of physical matter. And the latest stuff I saw, which is the electromagnetic spectrum, is actually 0.005% of 0.005%. We're basically, we can't perceive it. I think we can through our senses, multidimensionally, the mind's eye, through thought, sensation, and the five senses. Then you've got the aspect of this that my family's seen this, I've seen this. I don't know much of Jack's work, just little bits that people tell me that is similar to some of the stuff that I'm talking about. Where if you go back to the late 1800s, they had sky ships. And even going back before that, they had shields in the sky. Like shields when you're fighting, a shield. Then all of a sudden, even Kenneth Arnold, when he saw the 9 objects land on the western slope of Mount Adams, which is James Gilliland's front yard, literally, if you go and look at ESETI, what you've got is a scenario where they weren't flying saucers, they were delta shaped, but all of a sudden everyone starts seeing flying saucers. And even the Roswell craft wasn't a flying saucer. So all of a sudden people are seeing metallic ships. We've got the Foo Fighters. You've got the orb phenomena happening. You've got a scenario of what I'm trying to get to is that some of these drones could actually be crafts appearing as drones as well as real drones that we've got flying around at the same time. Just like I've seen crafts turn into a plane or vice versa or a helicopter. Now, are they doing that from in here? Meaning manipulating us and changing what we're experiencing? Are they doing it from the craft? And I'll give you an example. I had a podcast, not many people know this. It was a Peter Maxwell Slattery show over a decade ago. I had about 150 episodes. And there was a person I interviewed, and when I went to upload their photo onto the website and put the MP3 link as well as a YouTube link, their image turned into a reptilian. And then back. Now that is on a device, but was the device doing that? Or was that happening in here? And why I say this is because it can be either from what I know now. Again, it's not black, it's not white. That grey, my little joke is the grey area is beyond 50 shades. So it's looking at this in a way that don't ever think, just in my opinion, that you know what's going on. Because as soon as you do, there's a spanner that gets thrown in and it takes you down a whole new rabbit hole. And so many times people have come to me going, Pete, need to talk to you. I know what's going on. Well, it's like, if you know what's going on, why do you need to talk to me? And what I say is a little bit left of field for them. 3 months, 3 weeks later, they come back and go, man, whoa. And I'm like, just don't think you know what's going on, because I don't. I've got agencies and people wanting to talk to me. I won't work with them, but I'll tell you what, they wouldn't be coming to me if they knew what was going on. Nobody knows what's going on, including extraterrestrials, at 100%. At 100%. They can have more of the picture of what actually is going on. But once you start to perceive and understand the concept that this is all God's mind that we're experiencing, that we're on a treadmill and we're not really going anywhere, that's where I think that door to the unknown starts to open in the vessel that you're experiencing, in this case, the human body.
Well, to your point, like we don't know fully what's going on. I think that can create a lot of fear, right? Of the unknown. And people don't know how to react when they see these types of phenomenon. And so, what's your advice to them, right? So, if they're seeing orbs like myself, right, or if they start experiencing different interactions and they may feel fear, how do you know whether or not it is a positive or negative energy that is trying to influence you, or that is, projecting types of visions on you? Like, let's say I'm reading a book now that has ascended masters physically showing up in their environment, giving them lessons or giving them information about spiritual teachings in one book, and then in another book, it could be something totally different. It could be a different entity showing up in their physical reality. Like, so how do you know the good from the bad, I guess?
Very simple. Very simple. It took me a while to work this out. Now, some things are just going to be an experience and there's nothing to them. That's just a case. People have a sighting, this, that, the other. Sometimes I might have an idea. Sometimes I won't. But sometimes it's just an experience like this is just an experience like not just you and I now, but everything is just an experience. But the litmus test is what's the fruit from the experience? This is it for me. If it doesn't help me become a better person, be of service and bring love and joy into my life, what's the fruit from it? Now, on a physical level, what do you feel when you're experiencing that experience? Because there's bliss, there's awe, there's nothingness, or there's dread. The flip side of this is with the trickster intelligence, depending on how you respond will depend on how it responds. You get blissed out or you sort of take it in a positive way, it will amplify the positivity. If it's negative, it will amplify that. But there will be no fruit to it. What's the fruit from the experience?
I love that. I have experienced the dread part before, like coming out of sleep, like for no reason, just like kind of waking up and just feeling dread.
Was there any paralysis?
I don't remember. I just remember just being fearful.
This is sort of a weird area for some people that don't know that we're going to go into. So I've talked about this for many years now. And what can happen in a lot of cases is they can imagine an extraterrestrial vehicle. I'll start off with this and then we'll go to the spiritual entity aspect. Imagine, let's say, a flying saucer that's in an apparition form, now like a ghost. It can land on you in your bed and overlap the house. Now, you might hear like a whoomp, 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 or a high Tibetan singing bowl type noise, feel a bit of a vibration. Now, in your mind's eye, you could actually appear on board that craft like you're looking up. You could actually be vibrated onto that craft. They can even pull your consciousness out of your body and put you on the craft. You could physically, non-physically experience entities on it. They could even put you into another body to have an avatar and experience that in a more cohesive, conscious way. Now, if you and I are standing next to each other in each other's presence, what's happening is my light body is now overlapping your light body. We know this a little bit more now, though not in my terms. With, let's say, and I'm not a promoter of, we could say a promoter of heart math, but I don't work for them or anything. They don't endorse me or that. But what's happening is our magnetic field goes out and that affects others in our environment. What it is your light body. Your light body is overlapping others. So even, let's say you're in bed, you wake up and it's dread. Something's light body can be overlapping yours. You can't see them. And that can be the feeling. That's the byproduct of their frequency. You acknowledge people by their frequency. In the higher realms, they don't have names so they can. It's more their name is their frequency, their independent tonality that we all have. There's actually an independence to each and every single one of us, which is resonant in the way that it is because of our experiences and what we are as a cell of God on that level, that library of information that we have individually. Now, there is cases where, if let's say if paralysis was involved, with paralysis, if you had a nightmare before it and then you wake up and you're frozen momentarily, I'd say that's a dark experience. In other cases, if you don't have the darkness, it can be you waking up, coming back into the body and freezing, freaking out. And it can even be your team, a craft or spirit team putting you back with, coming back with you into the body. And if they're materialized, they're freezing you because they don't want you to turn around and freak out, and or freezing you because they want you to know that something's happened, but you may not be able to handle the full repercussions on it. And I'm sure 100 more things than what I'm saying as well. But that's what happens, is that even when we meet people we don't get a good feeling, and it's not to be judgmental, but there's just things we don't feel right about. That is the part of us that's multidimensional, that's knowingness. That's when we merge with source. It's a knowingness, a feeling that bypasses sight in a physical way. It's multidimensional sight. So it's a very layered thing.
It seems like it. It does. Because I remember waking up and just totally being, it was like, it was, so there was a dream where I was dreaming I was in bed. And this is the first time this has ever happened. I felt like a dark energy, like pull me down physically in that bed at the bottom of the bed. And then I woke up. Like I've never felt that before. I've never felt like something grab me and pull me in a dream, like physically like that. And then I woke up and it was like that dread feeling. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I've asked many people and they're like, oh, that's, that could be dark entities trying to pull you down, levels of consciousness, a metaphor for that, or pull you down to the level. And I mean, it is what it is, but I really like your take on it, right? Like to stay objective and be in the heart center. Um, because I had a meditation today, which I found interesting. When I was going into that heart space, I had this vision, and it was like the heart is the king of kings. It was like the heart of Christ energy, but it had like the lion fur around the heart, and it was like had a big crown on it, and it was like this is the king of kings, and like if you can be in that space, like I don't know, I'm a big fan of the heart math, and so like I've been doing a lot of Joe Dispenza's heart meditations too, heart centered meditations, and I have to be completely honest with you, um, the idea of this reality being a mirror and like what you're putting out, you're receiving forth, like that you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Well, for a long time, Pete, like I was living by the sword. Like I was that very egocentric. I was like very masculine alpha male. Um, and when I started working on my heart and meditation, like it softened that. And the more love that I radiate out into my reality, like the more that I receive that love from different people, like people started changing my reality. It wasn't like, you hear that saying, it's not them changing, it's you. I didn't understand that for a long time. It was like, what does that mean? It's me. Because, if this reality is a mirror, then what you're putting forth, you're receiving. Right. And the more that I do that, the more like my reality is changing, like 100%. Like you talk about the electromagnetic field that you put out, which is 5,000 times more powerful than the brain, you know? I can see how I can see how my interactions with the universe are changing because of that work, that heart-centered work. Like, the experiences that I'm seeing. I don't know what they are. I'm not going to try to say that I know exactly what they are. I'm seeing this stuff and I've never seen it before, but since I've been doing these meditations and doing the heart-centered meditations, like these are starting to come into my reality more. Um and I'm excited about that. Like I'm excited to see where this goes because like I feel a um transformation in my life anyway. Like it's not that where you're locked into the 9 to 5 and you're dreading going to work and because you are the victim. And now it's like, all right, you're stepping more into your inner power. Like what can we create, if that makes sense?
And that's a beautiful thing, and it won't stop. It won't stop in a good way. If you stick with where you're going and where it leads you, and getting onto that, look, and doing the heart techniques, the funny thing is that it's so simple, and we see the science behind it, and it's nothing new. That's the weird thing as well, which I say to people, like, even going on, let's say, back to James again. James Gillian with ESETI, when he was on Art Bell, there was around 20 million listeners a night back in the heyday when Art Bell was huge. James did initiating contact on that, which shut down the telephone lines, and people from all around America had sightings. And all it was something that I was intuitively doing myself. And then you look at heart math and everything else. The technique was tap into the heart, think of a loving, joyous memory, and then attach positive contact to it. That heart space is the direct phone to source, but it's also a direct phone to other things that are on this similar frequency. So simplistic, just tapping into the heart for a few minutes, thinking of gratitude and setting an intention. And we see the science, and now they're teaching those techniques to first responders. Like, it's taken extremely serious, in a serious way, and yet it's so simple, and that's what can not only transform us individually, but I believe us as a world. But we've got the situation where everyone's got their own journey and their own come from. And once you find it for you, like for me, where things stop, like there's the contact going on, I've been to other worlds, I've been on ships, I've done this and that. It's like, what's all this about? And for me, where my life completely changed, I can't put a time frame on it, maybe 7, 8 years ago, was getting up in the morning, first thing every day, and the last thing every night, saying to Source, God, Source, Creator, whatever you want to call it, how can I be a vehicle for you to work through? And I accept the blessings and abundance that comes with it so I can keep doing it. And that's how I've got where I am. And that's just the way it is for me. And I invite people to think about that for them. So the thing is, you've got your journey and you want to know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, well, you're going to stay exactly where you are. But then you flip the script at a certain level of going, all right, I've got to this new stage. That is no longer applicable unless it's for appointments or the 3D world in a business manner. But what about passion, which is purpose, and vice versa? And that's where I realized it was being a vehicle for Source. Now all that has to go out the window because you need to be ready to do whatever at any time. And it's uncomfortable. But like Joe Dispenza says, when you get into the unknown, now this is where you create. And now you're a creator being, but you can put Source in it.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, give me an example of when you had to, when Source called your number and you had to show up regardless, and like how uncomfortable that was for you? Can you give us an example of that?
Well, I'd gone through a marriage breakup, went to America for a bit, did things like Ancient Aliens and some other things, other opportunities started to present itself, got into another relationship that I wasn't with all the time because COVID was soonly after that, but I needed my space. Very unique situation, of course, being who I am, as you've seen in the documentary, just experiencing what I am. And it came back down to something really weird, was that a decade ago, I left this area, my hometown, with $500. And after the marriage, I had $500 again. And I'm like, man, this is like, I laughed about it going, but it didn't matter. It wasn't about money. It was just how funny it was that I left my hometown thinking if I don't leave my hometown after I'd been known for all this, people were doing this in windows at shops and paying me out and thought I'd lost it. I thought, I'm going to grow old and die alone here. I've got to get out. And I knew that on a soul mission through my contacts, there was more to this. So I sold everything I had, left with $500 and went up to the top end of Queensland. All of a sudden, not long after that, I met somebody, got married, moved down to Melbourne, and life unfolded in mysterious ways. And here I am back by myself again, $500. Now, going back years, I kept on having a vision of a huge tree and a T-section of fence and a mound. And it gets to COVID, and I'm stuck in a cabin that I got. It was like a caravan with an annex, like a metal one, but it was like sturdy. You couldn't move it, but It was at a holiday park that I'd been visiting nearly all holidays since I was a kid, that my family used to have one nearby. And it was at the bottom of Mount Buffalo, really beautiful area to me. It reminds me of the Pleiades. And so I got told through telepathic communication, you need to bunker down right now because this is where it's all going to start. And I'm like, what's going to start? And they're like, we've got to let this play out how it would. Now, this would be a conglomerate of my higher self with source and maybe some extraterrestrial and spirit guides. I'll say that because it's actually a lot of different things that will come in on those frequencies at the same time. So I've gone to $500. I'm in a part-time, we could say, relationship, which that was hard. Actual beautiful being, both of them were. And I'm stuck by myself going, well, I've done this for years when I did, years ago. So I'm like, all right, I've got a lot of clients to help online. So I've got internet. I can go hiking every day. This is sweet in the forest. And I can just see what, I can do in this amount of time in terms of saving because I've got nothing pretty much. And so, long story short, in about another 4 years since then, I'm now sitting here at Jaya Sanctuary that, of course, I've got, and I'll be personal about this, I've got a mortgage and I'm paying off from $500, which is basically zero. And when I come to this property, I spent 1 year every day, whether calling real estates or searching online. I walked to the middle of this property that I found on a pendulum, meaning using a pendulum on a map, saying I used to go there and do government conservation work when I was in my late teens. I get to the area, walk out in the middle of the property, get hit with energy, and I look to my left, and there's the big tree, the mound, and the T-section of fence. And then I realise that on both sides of me, I planted all the trees 20 years ago. That's an example, but you need to listen. You need to meet the universe halfway. This isn't about me. I'm leaving the sanctuary when I'm not here. This is so people in Australia have somewhere to go, somewhere to network, somewhere to experience, somewhere to do the deep work. I only have 15 people here at a time, usually every second weekend for a day or 2 day event. I'm not here with women everywhere and doing drugs and a guru. It's a space that is needed. But with that said, because I'm not leaving this except for those who can carry this on, that's me following what I knew I needed to do. I knew the thing is I had no one's help. I contacted researchers. The only person that ever got back to me for any help was Mary Rodwell up in the top end in Queensland, who's originally from the UK. And my thing was I had to do all the training, a lot of it online. Then I go and meet a lot of these teachers in person. They're like, Pete, you don't need any training. And it's like, well, I still do courses. I still learn. I still meet people and do stuff. So it's like, that's what I want to provide here. And that's where all this led. So it's in a way what I'm saying is not like, look at me. But my point is, if you really surrender and you follow what you're passionate about, things when you look back will start to make sense. Like that vision made sense. I didn't understand it at the time. I knew I'd be doing something like this. And I knew it before I met James Gillian with ECD Ranch. And he's like, you have ECD Australia, And it's like, well, how the hell am I watching this dude on a film halfway across the world? Now I'm sitting here with him and now he's visiting me. Like, how does that work? And it's because there is a higher plan, but if you can surrender, and like I say, what's the fruit when I surrendered? Sometimes it's about me becoming a better person, being of service and bring love and joy into my life. I will match that and elevate that. So you've got to surrender, and that surrender is scary. Because when you're in the unknown, there's two things that prevent this. Fear of the unknown, meaning if I make this choice, what's going to happen? You want to be comfort, you want security, especially if you've got kids. You need to be that security blanket. Then there's the other aspect of the security of, so fear of the unknown, fear of security, safety and financial security. But if you can observe and just witness what's coming through in terms of directives, is it pulling your heart or is it not? Because if you get into the mind's going to include reasons not to do it. But if you get into the heart space and then observe it and go, yeah, mind, you've got your valid points, but you need to work in cohesive manner with the heart, and it's going to pull you where you don't want to go. Everything we're taking on board, discernment, making sure you got me back, this, that, the other. But we're going to go some places right now that you're not ready for, but you're going to love it. Because when I left my hometown with $500, I was scared. I'm like, I've just given up all security, paid off all my debt bills. I got nothing except this. Like, what am I going to? And everyone thought I was crazy. And here I am now. And, what's unfolded is unfolded. And it was scary as hell. But I knew it was my heart pulling me. That was the difference. It wasn't like some fantasy. I want to do this and I want to do that. It was like, I've got to do this. And I got no idea why. But at the worst, I'll restart again because I've got to restart again either way. And if I've got to restart again, I've got to restart again. It is what it is. But if I'm doing what I'm doing and there's purpose to it, universe, show me what's going to unfold from here. And that's just it's a long roundabout way to answer that question, but that's an example of multiple ramifications from following the heart going into the.
I love it, man. I love hearing your stories. Do these I don't even know what to call them. I mean, the Pleiadians or whomever, right? Like people that are the star seeds or the star systems that you interact with. And again, it's just, I'm out of my lane, outside of my comfort zone when I talk about these things because I don't have a lot of knowledge. I haven't spent a lot of time down those rabbit holes. But they just keep coming into my reality, and I don't know if I'm attracting that or what. Um, but are they telling you the same thing about, like, do they follow their purpose, or is that what they're like? Do they surrender to the universe? Do they recognize source as the creator? Does that make sense?
No, it does. Very similar ways. Like there are human beings like us in the Pleiades. Now, it's too young to harbour life right now, but multidimensionally it's different. And also, some of these beings are us in the future that I'm interfacing with in the Pleiades. Some of the greys are too. The ones I deal with are not. Well, I've experienced negative ones and I've had military stuff as well, but the white ones are actually light beings. They appear physically like white greys, but they're not. That's just the way they started interfacing with me. So there is life in around different stars in the Pleiades. Merope or Merope, the way I call it, is the main place that I went and interfacing with blue felines there as well as humanoid beings there. There's also feline and lion beings in Sirius that if you go back and even look at India and Egypt, there is some cases where these beings are wearing a type of mask. And in some cases, it's not a mask. There are beings that are humanoid that are not just lion or cat like. There's bird like and turtle like and all different types. And then there's a huge connection that I've got to Orion. Now, there's also the Lyrians, the ancient Lyrians, that were all, what my understanding is, that the first to materialize on any planetary body or even star, because beings live on star, are the Elohim. Once conditions are ripe to harbour a specific type of life, they will then materialize as male and female, procreate, so now souls can enter those bodies and that project can take off. And sometimes you've got ET races that will come and influence these situations. But everything's constructed from a light blueprint, meaning everything is constructed from light. Consciousness creates vibration, which is sound. Sound creates light. Light creates physical matter. And now we're actually starting to see science back this up, and vice versa. It's interchangeable. A lot of these races have over time, yes, they may have, I wouldn't say religions, but the basic underlying theme is that they all believe in the creator or one, or the ways of the one, which some of them have termed it to me, which is funny. And for example, with Pleiadians and other civilizations, even in Andromeda, they use technology to a way that can do very simplistic things, so they can spend time educating themselves and being passionate about what their heart's pulling them towards. And it could be, let's say, on one level, there are sometimes parents that are very psychic and intuitive in these races, that they know what this child's done on a soul level and what it's here to do. But they won't lead that child. They'll caress and sort of comfort that child to find that direction themselves. Very much like what happened with Yeshua here on earth, Jesus, which has been same beings been on many worlds. So you've got a scenario where there's that, but they're also encouraged to try and do new things. So you don't have the situation of tax, of education, and you repeat this and you can repeat that good enough where you now give you a certificate of what we've educated you on, which even bad example here was that I can remember with science, this teacher said, you've got to lie on these 3 questions and answer it this way because they haven't changed the test. So what I taught you is right, but you've got to repeat it this way to get the marks here. And so when you're following passion and purpose, you're coming into a civilization to elevate it. And there is very much a balance of spirituality and technology in most of these positive spacefaring civilizations, which I'd say about 95% out there, meaning positive. It's like, you can look at whether it's police officers, this, that, or the other. It's usually a few bad eggs that ruin the reputation of all, right? It's the same, we could say, that applies in the universe multidimensionally. Just as an example, my dad was a police officer for 38 years and highly respected, but there's a few bad eggs out there and not all cops are good cops. So it's very much, your ETs, they're all negative. No, there's a few bad eggs, but not all of them. So they understand, and some of them can read us on a soul level of who and what we are and how we're connected to them. Usually what's interfacing with you, you're connected to. Usually, a lot of the time. So they understand the predicament humanity's in because of what I call the darkness, those that are void of light, the lower light, which are the fallen Elohim, not the positive ones that are void of light, that wanted to stay in physicality or just out of it, creating a simulation to derive energy that perpetuates this so they can stay as masters of lower light in what they perceive as their physical reality, which this ascension is for them too, which ascension is a very layered topic we could go into. And so what's happening here has happened and is happening throughout not just this galaxy, but galaxies. But like I say, not all these craft or lights in the sky we're seeing are extraterrestrial. Some are ultra-terrestrial that are living right next to us that have been here for a long time. Some are angelic and nature spirits and what have you. It's just, again, it's not something that's black and white, but I hope that's answered your question good enough. I've gone on a bit of a rant there, like always.
Yeah, I shake my head like, "Yep, yep, you're like, I have no idea," but I'm trying to stay on course and understand, the best of my ability about what you're saying. I think, um, it's all about experiences, right? And your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth. I'm open-minded and, I I don't know, I want to experience.
But I will say this. I just want to say this just quickly. Sorry for cutting off. There's your truth and my truth, but then there's the truth.
Was there was there one is there one overarching truth?
Well, there is in the end. I'm just at this opinion now because I keep hearing this and it's not having a go at anyone. But let me analyze it like this. There's a car accident. Now the car's going this way, and there's a car that hits this and causes the accident. Now, depending on some viewers over here, the angle that they saw, they may say the other person was responsible, or the other person was responsible, all because of the angle. But there's a reason that crash happened. Right? Now, who's in the right, who's in the wrong? I'm not going to say in this scenario, but what I'm saying is that's all about your lens that you're viewing this reality through. And that's why I say we know what we know, and even what you know, be prepared for that to be a conduit to get to the next level of the actual knowingness. Because there's knowledge, but knowledge doesn't mean jack unless you got wisdom. And how you implement that wisdom on a proactive manner is where all that prequel, the knowledge and the wisdom, actually means anything. So as long as you're in your truth, that's great. As long as you're following your heart, even better. But there is the truth, and that's it. and your truth might be the truth for you, which is great. And it will get you to where you need to go most of the time. As I say to people, that's fine. Like I've been the same way. Like I know what I know, and to me, that's my truth. But I've also come to a realization that there is truth, and that's all there is. Now, whether we know it now or not, I can't say in so many different genres and areas. But if we know what we don't know, and you follow that feeling, that's usually the truth. That's like source. It's a feeling. It pulls you. And sitting in that space, meditating in that space, connecting in the heart while meditating on that question, that situation, that scenario, it's what feels right that will pull you in that. So I just wanted to throw another perspective in there because a lot of people are saying that. And like I say, that car accident scenario, there could be two witnesses over there that are 100% know what caused it from their angle. They had full view, but the other people over here that only had a quarter view, they're going to think the same thing and they're wrong. That's their truth, but they're wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, there's something that happened, right? And everyone's gonna perceive that happening as something different, just from the lens, right? But the truth is that something happened. So the thing is with me is that my happening, the thing that hasn't happened yet. So like, I feel um, like listening to you talk and watching your podcast and listening to your stories are just so enticing to me because like me personally, like I want to know that this reality is there's more to this reality than meets the eye. Like I've read all the books. Like I listen to podcasts or I watch other YouTube shows and I hear people's experiences and I'm like, holy crap, that's awesome. That's amazing. I want to I want to experience different parts of this reality, not just what we have believed for so long. Like you and I are the same age. I'm born in 83. So my life up to this point in the United States has fit a certain model of reality, like a certain status quo. And it was great, right? It was awesome. Growing up in the 90s and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Pizza Hut and all the things, right? That was great. It was great, right? But then you get to this point where I think you and I are very similar, where there's a pull at our heart for something more. And I think a lot of people are starting to feel that more. Like they're starting to feel like there is just more to life than going and working a 9 to 5 and retiring and wasting away after retirement of like really struggling with mental health and figuring out what your purpose is and just like picking up the grandkids and taking them to school. Like there's more to this reality. There's more, there's this excitement I feel like that is building around like the possibilities, like interactions, like, well, what is my consciousness? Can I travel to different dimensions? How do I do that? How do I have a different experience? Like Bob Monroe's book to me was like a catalyst and like trying to experience out of body experiences because of the places and dimensions that he was able to go and create or experience for himself. That to me was like, oh crap, man, like there's just more to this place than meets the eye. And then I've done a lot of meditation, man. Like I've done a lot of meditation, and it isn't until recently where maybe I just been so busy with the things, all the things that I didn't really realize what was taking place in my reality. Maybe the universe or source was talking to me the entire time. I just wasn't listening. But recently, like I've really taken notice to changes in my reality. And, like the orbs or whatever they are, like it's exciting for me because it's like, holy crap, like that is something that was never there before. Maybe it was, I just never took the time to look at it. And now I'm curious to what else is out there. And like your show, um, for me, like really creates more appetite for experience. And I know there's like a positive and negative effect to that. Like, you shouldn't open yourself up to all the energy, right? Like you should just kind of take your time. Because I don't, you know what I mean? Because you talked about the negative experiences, but I mean, somebody listening to this podcast and listening to your story, because I like to introduce people to different newer concepts and get outside their comfort zones. Like, what's your advice to them, right? With all the knowledge of the universe that you have received, uh, and expanding their consciousness and exploring their curiosity, like how can they explore more of their experience at a in a more intimate and connect more intimately with the universe to receive signs or communications that they're not alone.
So there is a lot of free techniques and tools on the website, but first off, to the heights you want to reach, you will equal the same resistance on that journey. People have not seen the tears that I've cried, the people that I've lost, the memories, good, bad, the successes, the triumphs. We've all got them. It has been huge, especially the last 4 years for me more than ever. With that said, though, it all comes down to dedication and discipline. People don't see me getting up early and doing qigong and yigong and my karate katas and my yoga and meditating, remote viewing, doing psychic exercises that I've got every day. I mix it up. Usually it's very intense for 3 days, and then these days I'm doing the weekends off. But now it was 7 days. Now 5 days of intense, but 3 of them Monday, Wednesday, Friday very intense. They don't see all that. They see all this. They don't realise it's a lot of work. I've got to do 6 hours mowing by myself. I've got gardening I've got to do. I've got bills to pay. I've got things I've got to maintain, and I'm living all this, and I'm doing it by myself. Except I've got Source. So when you reach great heights, you'll equal, the resistance will be equal to that which you're putting out. But that resistance, or what appears to be resistance, is actually part of the process. That if I was open years earlier, I wouldn't have been ready. That sometimes patience is the goal for what you think is negative influence, deterrences, acts, this, that, the other. There's a reason for everything that I analyze things 100 ways. One of the biggest things is to assist humans with being multidimensional while being human, that I've come to realize. I've said this before: the love from another, the touch from another, the smell of a rose, animals, plants, what have you. I don't know if you can still see me because I've just got a spinning wheel. Here I am. But being human, see, what happens is people see all this and they think, great, they don't know what I've gone through. They don't know what other experiences go through, but the cherry on top for all of it is the most simplistic things that don't cost a cent. You've got a child. How is it when that child's happy that you're pleased that it makes your day over anything else? Right? Being human, and this gets into ascension. There's elevating one's consciousness. There's going to a new earth. There's achieving the Merkaba or the rainbow body. There's so many different things to ascension. But the most advanced thing for me of ascension is incorporating all that while being human and enjoying the human experience. People want to be elsewhere. They've done all that. You've done it all. This is what gets me with this is people go on to be on 5D, or I want to be 5D or 6D, whatever D they want, right? That's great. That's fine and dandy, but there ain't nothing like this. And my thing is, you've done all that. You're here now. Like this pinpoint of awareness, all that's going on at the same time anyway. You're here. You're here for a purpose. So embrace the beautiful things about what the pinpoint of awareness you're experiencing is, which is being human. Again, the touch from another, love, the smell of fresh air, the wind on the face, all these simplistic things, laughing, having a good time, cracking a joke. So if you're going to delve into this, which it becomes obsessive, this is where I've seen people's lives destroyed. That every waking moment starts to be research about super soldiers and the Illuminati and the Cabal. All that's real. I know it's real, believe me. I've been taken to some places and I experienced stuff. That's real, but don't get obsessed even with the ET or the spiritual stuff. I'll give you an example. I'm friends with this person now. They appeared here at the sanctuary a few years ago, and they said, one thing I want to talk to you about. They came to see if I was the real deal, which is funny enough, and I get that every time. And he goes, after a while talking, I've got a problem. I can't meditate anymore. I said, you're not meant to. And he's worked with master teachers, very intense practices over many years. He goes, what do you mean? I said, all those years of meditation is so you're meditative, constantly in a meditative state. That's what it's about. It's not about doing that every day. Even the yogis and the masters. Now, with yoga, it's a bit different. Some of them will do a certain asana for a few hours once they're a master teacher and do that, sometimes only that every day. But for example, with Tibetan monks, do you think they're sitting up there on top of a mountain meditating all the time? They usually do it for maybe 2, 3, 4 years or a short stint of a few months. They're not doing it forever. They'll keep up meditation practice, but then they'll dip out of that for a while. So it's about carrying that meditative state with you all the time. And that's what I'd like for people to know, is to carry those practices with you and implement them. If you're not implementing them, what was the use of going to that ashram for that event or those few weeks or months or whatever it is? Make your life a moving meditation. Know that the trials and tribulations are part of what I've come to know now, and people would know this well, is the hero's journey. That you go to reunite with the light that you came from, the light you're going back to. You're on a journey outside of that, and when you hit that light again, you know everything that is. I've experienced this. I know this. I can't prove this. But when you go back to that light, this is nothing but a dream and an experience that you'll embrace the lessons and the knowledge in that and reunite with all the other cells of your partner or your children, this, that, the other, from not just this life, but other lives, in a way that the linear mind cannot digest or I can even convey.
That was beautiful, man. So there's so many questions. So when these organizations like the Illuminati or whatever these organizations come and they want to see, like, you're talking about physical beings coming to you and then seeing, visiting you at your location to see if you're the real deal. Like, are they asking you questions about like what are you doing here? Are they trying to pretend they're not who they are? Like, what does that look like?
Look, what it is, when it comes to the Illuminati and Cabal, I was taken to a couple of military bases, which I write about in Operation Starseed in my latest book called Ascending. So I've been taken to places where reptilians and greys are, and even certain types of military branches are that are US and Australian. I've been contacted by institutes and governments from abroad that wanted to study and test me. I've talked to people in different positions of authority, even people that have been theologian for the Pope, the UN, behind the scenes. None of this is a lot of this. I could blow the water on all this, but I've got to respect people's privacies. But there's all paper trails on a lot of this. And then there are people that rock up here to be something that they're not, and I can see that. And I've got nothing to hide, literally. You could send anyone here. There's nothing for me to hide. So then there's times where I've had these devices put on me to where I've been teleported and jumped to these military bases. And in the contacts going back over a decade now, in the material at that time that I write down, because a lot of the experiences I'd write down what's happened, it was conveyed to me material about the Illuminati, the Cabal, that there's a war going on even within different factions that are similar to that, including a majestic type scenario that other contactees and experiences I come to find out later have spoken about. So there is all that, but like I've said to people, what they've wanted to do with me, I'm doing here publicly and allowing the data to be public. And they know I'm the real deal, but it also shows that they don't know everything by getting me or working with me. So I've got nothing to hide and I'm open for conversation. But the thing is, a lot of these institutions, governments, and secret organizations have peaked. Now, they've either aligned with darkness and they know what magic is, just like you and I do, if we want to call it that. They're just using intention for other means for a darker force. So you've got that scenario, but you've also got a scenario that they can't peek past that because their intention. Now, I'll give you an example. What some of these negative entities and even the Cabal can do seems advanced because, hey, they're pretty darn smart the way that they've played all this out, whether it's through our food, what's in our air, nanotechnology, uh, Wi-Fi, scalar technology. The list goes on. But they can't experience and understand more because of what they've aligned with. So even if I want to have contact in front of them with who I'm in contact with, they already know the scenario, meaning my crew. They know everything they're thinking, what they want to do with it. And they could even be there in some of these locations present without them even knowing. And they can't glean certain abilities because of their intention to militarize it. That's the thing. You only gain access, not just technologically, but consciously, to that which you're in alignment with. And that's why they've peaked. And that's why we've got a lot more access to things that they've got no idea, though probably some idea about, meaning what I would describe as ascension or superhuman abilities like levitation, telekinesis, bilocation and teleportation. The list goes on. There's people that have got these abilities. Like I've levitated a couple of times or 4 times now. I've been able to do telekinesis a handful of times. Thing is, I can't repeat. I know I've got an idea how I can do it, but I can't repeat it on demand. Though I've been able to do it with intense dedication and protocols and practices over a couple of years now. And then there's people that can do all this just like that. I believe in our ascension body, our light body, all that we know anyway. That's the joke on it all. But we're here to assist with uplifting where the playing field's gone out. Now, you can't influence civilization, as they say. So you've got the fallen Elohim, the Dark Masters, the lower light, working with certain factions of reptilians, greys, the list goes on, that are manipulating behind the scenes that have steered humanity where they are. So the positive side was like, all right, they're not doing it directly, though it's influencing directly. They've done it a non-direct manner, like a proxy war. What can we do? Let's get who want to volunteer and incarnate. Put a pinpoint of your awareness into a human vessel. Let's go in. Who's up for that?
I love it, man. I could talk to you forever. Uh, I could talk to you forever. Peter, how can people find you? How can they connect with you?
They can go to petermaxwellslattery.com, jayasanctuary.com, Jaya sanctuary.com, or ecetiaustralia.org. And they've got links to all the social media pages and what have you. But I just hope this has been beneficial, and it's been a pleasure doing this with you, Trey.